Before I show you a single thing, let me tell you about a woman named Katie Fisher. She was my grandmother. 71 years old that winter, hands like old harness leather, a gray dress and a black bonnet she'd worn since before I was born. And in the January of 1994, an ice storm came down over Lancaster County and took the power out for 9 days. Now, we're Amish. We didn't have power to lose. But our neighbors, the English family down the road, the Bakers, they had a young mother named Ellen, maybe 26, with a little boy sick with a fever. And on the third day, I watched Ellen standing at the end of her driveway in the freezing rain, crying, with 2 garbage bags full of food from a freezer that had gone warm. Everything she owned to feed that child was spoiling in her hands. And she had been taught, her whole life, she had been taught that food left out of the cold was dangerous, poison. So she threw it all away, all of it. And then she stood there with nothing. My grandmother saw her from our porch. She didn't say a word. She went down to the cellar, and she came back up the road carrying a crock of buttermilk, a jar of broth, still soft, from the back of the stove, half a loaf of bread from the bread box, and a dozen eggs that had never once seen a refrigerator. And Ellen looked at that food, and the first thing she said, I'll never forget it. She said, "Katie, is it safe?" My grandmother just looked at her, and she said, "Child, this is how everybody's grandmother fed everybody's children for 1,000 years, and the whole world grew up strong. The only thing that ever made it dangerous was forgetting how." That little boy ate warm broth that night. He was fine by the weekend. And I've thought about that moment my whole life, because Ellen wasn't foolish. Ellen was smart and careful, and she loved her son. She threw away good food and stood in the rain with nothing, not because she was wrong to be careful, but because somebody, somewhere, had quietly taught a whole country to be afraid of its own kitchen. That's what this is about. 20 foods your great-grandmother kept right out on the counter, on purpose, and was right to. Because the refrigerator didn't just keep our food cold, it made us forget how food was supposed to work. Let me show you. My name is Claudio. I'm Amish, and I farm here in Lancaster County. The same ground my grandfather worked and his father before him. Everything I'm going to show you today, I learned the way I learned to walk, by being around it every day, my whole life. The crocks on the counter, the broth on the back of the stove, the eggs in a bowl by the window. And before I go one step further, for the folks who want all of it, not just these 20, but every old method we've kept, the exact amounts, the timings, the way to store each thing so it lasts, I put the whole of it together in a book. It's called the PLAIN Almanac. The link is the first thing in the description below. I'll tell you where the details are as we go, but I'm not going to stop and sell it to you every 2 minutes. It's there if you want it. Let's get to the food, because here is the thing you have to understand first. What happened to Ellen didn't happen by accident. Somewhere in the last 70 years, the American kitchen was taught to stop trusting itself, and there was money in teaching it. In the 1940s and 50s, the men who sold refrigerators had a problem. They needed a reason for every single family in the country to buy a big cold box, and then a reason to keep it full. So the window of what was called safe began to shrink. Foods that had sat on counters and in cellars and in crocks for 300 years were suddenly called dangerous, not because the food changed, because somebody needed to sell you the cold. The same years, the men who sold factory oils needed you to stop trusting lard and tallow and butter, the fats that had fed this country since it began. So those got called the enemy too. We'll come back to that because it matters. The Amish just never got the memo, or we got it and we looked at it and we set it right back down. And our families are fine, better than fine. So let me walk you through it the way it was actually done. I've put these into 4 parts. First, the living counter, the things that were kept out and alive on purpose. Then, the fat pantry they took from you. Third, the overnight foods we've been trained to fear. And last, the foods the refrigerator is quietly ruining right now in your kitchen today. Let's start with the living counter. Buttermilk. Real buttermilk never came from a carton. It was a liquid left after churning cream into butter, and it sat on the counter, alive, slightly sour, until somebody needed it for biscuits or cornbread. You take fresh whole milk, you leave it out, and the bacteria already in it do the work. It thickens, it sours gently, and it turns into the best baking liquid there is. The acid in it is what makes a biscuit tender and tall. Now the exact temperature, the exact number of hours to leave it, and how to tell the moment it's ready and not a moment past, that's the kind of thing you don't want to guess at. I've written the timing and the how to know it's ready test down in the description, so you have it in front of you and you don't ruin a good jar of milk. Here's the next one, and it'll save you money starting this week. Soured milk. If your milk is turned a little tangy in the smell, a little thick, you are not holding spoiled milk. You are holding the single best thing for quick breads there is. Farmhouse bakers treated soured milk as a resource, not a problem. The rule is simple. If it smells tangy but not rotten, if it's thickened but not curdled hard, it's not spoiled. It's cultured. Use 1 cup wherever a recipe calls for buttermilk. The exact spoiled or cultured test, what to smell for, what to look for, and the one sign that means you really should toss it, I put in the description so you're never guessing with your family's food. Bone broth. For most of this country's history, the back of the stove was never empty. A pot of bones, chicken, beef, pork, simmered there, sometimes for days. Every scrap went in. You ladled from it, you added water, and you never let it die. Ours ran the same way. And the trick that makes it safe to keep out is this. You bring it to a hard boil once every morning. That heat resets it, kills anything that thought about growing overnight, and every pass makes it richer. A pot of broth costs almost nothing, and it's better than anything in a carton. And the science folks are now saying those very compounds are good for your gut. The old way was right. They're just catching up. The exact morning routine, how long the boil, how much water back, how many days you can safely run one, is written out step by step in the description. The vinegar mother, every apple you peel, every core, that's been going in your trash. In our kitchen it went in a jar. Apple scraps, water to cover, a little raw sugar, and a splash of raw vinegar to start it. Cover it with a cloth. Set it in a warm corner, and in a few weeks a living disc forms on top. That's the mother. It's alive, and it will make you apple cider vinegar out of scraps forever, as long as you feed it. A $1 bag of scraps replaces a bottle that runs $4 to $8 at the store. My grandmother was given a piece of her mother's when she married. Some of those cultures are older than the people tending them. The exact recipe, the amounts, the sugar, the weeks, and the way to keep mold off the top is numbered out in the description. This is one you want to get right, so open it up and follow it. Whey. Every time you strain yogurt or make a soft cheese, a pale liquid drains off. That's whey. Most folks pour it straight down the drain. On a homestead, that was unthinkable. It makes bread more tender in place of water. It gives soups a savory body, and watered down, it feeds acid-loving plants like tomatoes and blueberries. Not a drop had to be wasted. The ratios, how much for bread, how much to water it for the garden, are in the description. And the last of the living, counter sauerkraut, and the crock ferments. A crock of shredded cabbage and salt pressed down under its own brine, kept for months in a cool corner. No canning, no freezing, no refrigeration. The salt and the living bacteria protect it. This is food that gets safer as it sits, not more dangerous. Sauerkraut, pickles, kimchi, all the same idea our people ran for centuries. Now the salt ratio is the whole game here. Too little and it spoils. Too much and it won't ferment. I put the exact salt to cabbage weight in the description. Get that number right and the crock does the rest. That's the living counter. Now chapter 2, the fat pantry they took from you. Everything here fed this country for centuries and was pushed off your shelf by a marketing campaign after the war, and they're not the same. Knowing which fat does which job is the whole point. Ghee. Ghee is butter with the water and the milk solids cooked out and strained off. What's left keeps 12 to 18 months on the shelf, no cold needed, because the parts that spoil are gone. It has the highest smoke point of any common fat, so it won't burn or turn on you under high heat, and folks who can't take dairy can usually use it just fine. The exact method, the pound of butter, the low heat, the 20 to 30 minutes, the 3 layers to watch for, and the moment to pour it off, is written out in the description so you don't scorch a batch. Lard. Lard is rendered pork fat, and if that sentence made you flinch, that flinch is exactly what 50 years of advertising was built to do. The fat in lard forms flat crystals that make a pie crust and a biscuit flaky in a way butter simply cannot. Ask any old pastry hand. You render it low and slow. You strain it, and it keeps 6 to 12 months, cool and dark. The full rendering, the cut of fat to ask your butcher for, the water to start it, the temperature, the timing, is numbered in the description. Tallow. Tallow is rendered beef fat. It's what McDonald's fried in until 1990, and people who remember those fries remember them as better. That's not nostalgia, that's chemistry. Tallow holds up to high heat, where the factory oils break down and turn into something you don't want to eat. Render it just like lard. Ask for kidney suet for the cleanest flavor, and it keeps a year or more on the shelf. And which fat for which job? Lard for baking, tallow for high heat frying, ghee for everything else. I put the whole simple chart in the description so you can print it and put it on the cupboard door. And counter butter. Salted butter, kept in a covered crock on the counter, is normal across France and in plenty of Amish kitchens. The French even made a special little pot for it, a Buttermilk, where a bit of water seals the air off so it stays fresh and soft and spreadable. No cold, no waiting for it to soften. Butter you can actually spread on your bread. How the Buttermilk works and how to set one up is explained in the description. That's the fats. Chapter 3 now. The overnight foods we've been trained to fear. Eggs. A fresh egg comes with its own protection, a natural coating the hen leaves on the shell called the bloom. It seals the pores and keeps the egg good on the counter for weeks. In this country, we wash our eggs and we scrub that bloom right off, so then they need the cold. In most of the world, they don't wash them, and the eggs sit in a bowl on the counter just fine. An unwashed egg from your own hens or a farm does not need the refrigerator. How to store them, how long they truly last on the counter, and the simple bowl of water test to check any egg. It's all in the description. Fresh bread. And here is one people get exactly backwards. The refrigerator is the worst place you can put a loaf of bread. The cold actually makes it go stale faster. Bread belongs in a box or a crock or a cloth on the counter, and a real loaf with real ingredients keeps several days that way, soft and good. The way to wrap and keep each kind so it lasts longest is written out in the description. Oats and the grains. Our people soak the grains overnight before cooking. In water with a spoon of something sour, a little whey, a little buttermilk. It softened them. It made them cook faster in the morning, and it made them easier on the stomach. It sat on the counter all night, covered, and it was ready at dawn. The exact soak, how much sour, how many hours, is in the description. The sourdough starter. A sourdough starter is just flour and water gone alive, and it lives on the counter, fed once a day, for years. It's what leavened bread before anyone could buy a packet of yeast. It doesn't belong in the cold if you bake often. It belongs out where it's warm and working. The feeding schedule, how much flour, how much water, and when, is numbered in the description. And honey. Honey never needs the refrigerator, and truthfully, it never really spoils at all. Sealed in a jar, it will outlast you. If it turns thick and grainy, crystallized, it is not bad. You warm it gently, and it comes right back. The cold only makes it hard as a rock for no reason. The gentle way to bring crystallized honey back is in the description. And that brings us to the last chapter. What the refrigerator is quietly ruining right now in your kitchen. Tomatoes. Never put a tomato in the refrigerator. The cold breaks down the very things that make a tomato taste like a tomato. The flavor goes flat, and the flesh goes mealy and dead. A tomato belongs on the counter, stem down, out of the sun. And that's not an old superstition. The food scientists say the exact same thing now. Potatoes, onions, garlic, and the winter squash. These want cool, dark, and dry, not cold and damp. In the refrigerator, a potato turns its starch to sugar and goes sweet and strange. The onions go soft, the garlic sprouts. In a cellar, or even a dark cupboard, they keep for months. And keep the onions and the potatoes apart. Together they spoil each other faster. How to set up a simple cellar corner, and which of these must be kept apart, is laid out in the description. Hard cheese. Real hard cheese was never a cold box food. It was waxed or wrapped in cloth and aged in a cool cave or cellar for months, even years, getting better the whole time. The cold and the plastic drawer are what make cheese sweat and mold wrong. The way to wrap and keep a good hard cheese is in the description. Cured meats. Before there was a freezer in every house, meat was kept with salt and with smoke, hanging in the smokehouse in the cellar through the whole year. A ham, bacon, dried beef, cured right, it keeps for months at room temperature, the way it fed families through every winter for centuries. I've got a whole video on the salt method, but the principle belongs right here. Cold was never the only way to keep meat. It was just the newest. The basics of the salt cure and the link to the full method are in the description. And the last one, apples and the root vegetables. Apples, carrots, beets, turnips, these kept all winter in a cellar, some of them buried in boxes of dry sand or sawdust that held them firm and fresh for months. One bad apple really does spoil the barrel, so you sort them. But sorted and cellared, they carried a family from harvest clear through to spring, with never a wire of electricity. The box of sand method, which vegetables, how to pack them, and how cool it needs to be, is written out step by step in the description. So that's 20. 20 foods your great-grandmother kept right out in the open, on purpose, and fed strong, healthy families doing it. And I want to take you back to my grandmother Katie and to Ellen standing in the rain, because the lesson was never that the refrigerator is evil. It's a fine tool. The lesson is that Ellen was made helpless. A smart, careful, loving mother was made helpless by forgetting things her own great-grandmother knew by heart. When the power went out, the cold box was empty and useless, and everything she'd been taught left her with 2 garbage bags and nothing to feed her son. The people who kept the old ways didn't even notice the storm. Now, everything I showed you today, I gave you the plain idea of it, but the exact amounts, the timings, the salt ratios, the how to know it's ready, the way to store each single thing so it lasts, the things you actually need to do it right in your own kitchen without ruining a batch. All of that is waiting for you in the description below. So here's what I want you to do. Open the description. Start at the very top. That first link is the Plain Almanac, where I've kept every one of these methods and 90 more, all in one place, with every measurement written down. Then keep scrolling, because underneath it, I've numbered out the details for each of the 20 foods we covered today, in the same order, so you can find any one of them in a second. Open the description, start with the link at the top, and follow the details for each thing down below. My name is Claudio. Keep the old ways. They'll keep you.